Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We put together a guide with some recommendations to help you focus on being financially fit at different milestones in your life. Some of you may be ahead of schedule, while others may have to play catch up. You can download this guide for free on our website. The link to download Your Path to a Lifetime of Financial Success is listed in the episode description. Or you can go to wiserinvestor.com, scroll to the bottom, and find it there. Now on to today's episode.
Welcome to a Rise Retirement Podcast, where we believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith, guiding you to financial freedom. Today are my co-hosts, Brad Lyons and Michaela Dowdy. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hi, Casey.
So we're going to continue along our theme this quarter of focusing on financial planning at different stages in life. We're still in our 20s. I feel young today, Brad, don't you?
I do. I feel young and spry.
Michaela, do you feel... Oh, never mind. So today we're going to focus on money management tips for recent college graduates or anybody in their early to mid 20s, really, right? So you graduate college, you roll out, you're in the real world. What do we do?
That's the ever looming question. What is the next step and what's our next move?
What did you do, Michaela?
For me, I went ahead when I knew I was going to start working at Wiser and knew what my salary was. I went ahead and made a budget actually with that. So then when I started looking at apartments and everything, I knew exactly what my budget could be for an apartment. And then that's how I moved forward to really know what would that look like. And I was moving to Atlanta, and Atlanta has a different living expense compared to Birmingham or Clarksville, Tennessee, which is where I grew up. So definitely like accommodating for that and doing a lot of Googling and research on how to build a budget correctly and doing the Excel spreadsheet kind of breakdown.
Is there a wrong way to do a budget?
Ooh, I think there is if you make it unrealistic. If you have an unrealistic budget, then that's a way that you're not going to stick to it. And so then that's not a good budget. So I think you have to be honest with yourself.
You see that here sometimes. I ask people for what their expenses are, and they kind of rattle off, oh, my utilities are this. And I'm like, well, do you eat?
Right.
Do you travel anywhere?
Does anything ever go wrong?
I mean, you live in a house and nothing ever breaks. I like to have that house. Okay. Brad. So what would you do differently in your 20s?
You know, that's a great question. It's the one time in life, or one of the times in life, where you could say, if I knew then what I know now, how would I provide that advice to somebody in that station of life? And really, it's a lot about what Michaela just shared with us, is understanding your cash flows and living within your means, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, you know, you'll hear from time to time is learn to pay yourself first.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that when we get into, you know, budgeting and recording your expenditures and really getting a handle on where your money is going, you know, what that cash flow looks like. There's rent, there's utilities, there's, you know, eating, you know, there's life, there's fun, there's emergencies that come up, and understanding where that cash flow is, and then assigning a purpose to each one of those dollars so that you know that there's some going to be spent in rent, food, living, etc. And I'm going to pay myself some as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do different.
It's real simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that if I went back to my 20s, I mean, I entered the finance world. That was kind of a rat race I wasn't quite ready for in a big brokerage company, and ended up being an airline, being an airline pilot, became an airline pilot. But at the same time, you know, looking back, probably should have dialed back expenses more, you know, because when you're in your 20s, you just think, I'll be making more money. Right? And I do move pretty fast. So maybe that, but at the same time, there's also other experiences that we got to have pre-kids that I probably wouldn't, you know, wouldn't want to give that up either. So
right.
It goes back and forth, I guess.
Right.
I think ultimately, you know, I'm very goal driven. So I always, for the most part, have been. I think that started probably more in college than high school, but being very goal driven, I kind of look at it as the balance sheet didn't matter. It was that I achieve what I wanted to achieve, and then I'll fix the balance sheet later.
Mm-hmm.
But very much probably forgetting a little bit about compounding, because we don't ever really think about that in our 20s. Like that, even if you're saving $50 a month, it really adds up.
And that, again, to Michaela's point, is that, your goals have to be realistic. You have to, be real with yourself. And initially starting out with goals is keep them small and keep them short, and create a behavior of achieving those goals, short term and small, and then they grow longer term and large. For a 20-something to say, my goal is to retire in 40 years. Yeah, that's kind of
that's a long time.
That's a long time. It's hard to imagine that. But if you say, my goal is in the next 4 months, okay, to accumulate X amount of money in order to pay off my credit card, to pay down on my student loan, to build up at least enough reserves that, I have a couple of months rent payment in the bank, so to speak. And once you achieve that goal, move to the next small goal, okay? Keeping the goals small and short-term and realistic at first, I think, is a great idea. So you get the feeling of satisfaction of achieving that goal.
Right.
And then moving on to challenging yourself to a larger goal.
Yes. And I feel like that's something that I even did and is one of my big goals. Like by the end of the year, I want to have at least 3 months of monthly expenses saved up, because I know how important that is. And so I think that that's something that was one of those smaller tangible goals where it's like every paycheck, a certain amount comes out of my paycheck and goes straight into that savings account to build towards that goal. And so it's one of those things that comes out just like my rent of thinking, where it's like, this isn't even money I'm going to touch. It's just going to go straight to my savings account. And so I think it's those smaller steps of having that goal, and really even setting a timeline on that goal is something huge for me, of like, I have to have a deadline in front of me to know that, like, okay, I need to get on the ball and make sure that this is happening. And so I think that has been really helpful for me to be able to feel more confident, even when I'm, having a fun expense, whether it be a concert ticket or something like that, because then I know I've already, like you said, Brad, paid myself first. And so I know I can like afford that excursion and afford moving forward with that. And so it really enables you, like I think how we've said in previous podcasts, to really have a more carefree life because you've already budgeted first. And so it really enables you to just step into life more carefree, knowing that you've already paid yourself.
Well, people often think of the word budget as a negative.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Oh, budgeting. That inhibits my spending.
Yes.
No, your income inhibits your spending.
Right.
Having a budget and an expenditure record actually is more uplifting and freeing financially,
Yes.
because once you've accomplished everything you need in that expenditure, record, that budget, everything else you can freely spend, because you've met your goals for that month. Next month they'll come along and you do it again. And again, it's short term, it's small, creating that behavior, okay, so that as your income grows and your expenditures often kind of grow along with that, so does your savings and your accomplishments along the way as well. So, the budget actually creates your ability to spend more freely rather than less freely.
Definitely.
Every dollar has a purpose.
Yes.
That's what budgeting should be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be fights over anything really. It just should be what's the purpose of the dollar. And so it can be used for fun stuff. Just that's its purpose, right? So yeah, creating financial goals. Yeah, building an emergency reserve. Obviously starting to save for retirement. I think another goal would be to exit your 20s debt free.
Absolutely.
So don't accumulate any new debt. If you can purchase a home, that's great. I think it almost takes parental help to purchase homes right now, at least in the metro Atlanta area, just because the down payment has to be so big.
I know some even, it takes, even to rent an apartment, it takes parental help right
Right
now.
Right.
They require, I think for my apartment, it was monthly, someone had to be making 5 times the monthly rent, which was over
wow.
$10,000 a month. And I'm like,
What?
I don't make $120,000 a year. So yeah, it's insane what the requirements are now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
For both people living there?
So it was
if you
like,
were married, would it?
yes, if I was married, it would have been fine. But it was since
Okay.
I was single, my monthly income didn't meet the requirement. So it was like I had to have a guarantor, and that guarantor had to have 5 times the monthly income.
Wow.
Yeah. Or not
Sounds like
monthly
a,
income.
sounds
but
like a
monthly.
ritzy place.
Not really.
Well, there's also housing that you have to have so little income too. Yeah, I remember when we were having our home refurbished in 2007, we were looking at, well, where do we sold a place, we bought a place, had to be remodeled. So where do we go? And so they're, let's just go to an apartment. And we saw this beautiful place that had just been built on Barrett Parkway, and we went in, and we actually ended up knowing the lady who's the receptionist, and she's like, "What are you guys doing here?" So we're just trying to find a lease for 3 months. She's like, "No, we've never leased for 3 months, but you have to make less than $30,000 to live here." I was like, "What? I never heard of such a thing."
Wow.
Times have changed.
But yeah,
That's
yeah,
not what they ask now.
Well, they got government, some kind of government subsidy, evidently, if they did that. So I don't know. I don't know much about that world, but that makes sense. So that, I guess another goal too is, think about, I have a friend that always tells a story about leaving college, and he buys one of those BMW Roadsters, the real small convertible, and it's like he had to have it, and it still today is like one of his favorite cars. But he said that he eventually sold it, and he bought some kind of a beater or something when Dave Ramsey got a hold of him, and they became debt free. It was a journey for them, but ultimately, if you do this wrong in your 20s and you accumulate a lot of debt, you end up being a slave to those payments. And so I'd make sure that you're well clear of that. Stay in your lane. I think that's, keep working hard, stay in your lane. Other people around you are going to make really, really poor choices with money, but on the outside, it's not like they're doing really well, or they're doing something different, or they have some secret. There's no secret. It's called monthly payments, and they just load up on them. They have a lot of nice things that depreciate. And in the end, they get to age 60, they don't have anything. So it's a great time to just be focused on you, your career, and building something. So when you think about making budgeting a habit, I'm the worst at budgeting, honestly. I'm the pay yourself first guy. So just throw the money in the 401k and outside savings account, and we're good. But when you guys do budgeting in your 20s, I mean, there's probably a lot more fun stuff than what I put in my budget. Mine's like high school tuition. And
I feel like mine mostly goes towards food. I don't know about the rest of the 20-year-olds, but I feel like mine goes to food and coffee, because coffee is the thing that makes me happy a lot. And
so do you actually budget for that? Do you budget for coffee runs?
I probably should.
It just falls under food.
Yeah, it really does. I budget for groceries, and then I have the additional. So I budget for groceries, and then different random things that are regular expenses. But then I have and then I have an amount that'll be left over at the end of the month, and that's kind of where I'll have my coffee money kind of thing.
So
speaking of, you mentioned careers,
Yeah.
like spending your time, immersing yourself in your career and getting started, often with careers and jobs or retirement plans. And we should talk a little bit about how to get started in your company's retirement plan in your 20s and allowing that compounding interest to take effect.
Yeah, I think the default advice for most people who are in their 20s, they're just getting started out. If you don't know where to put your money, just use a target date fund initially, or put it all in the S&P 500.
Right.
Just something that is very straightforward. It's managed for you. As you build a net worth or build a sizable balance, then you can start working on the other allocations within the plan. But I think for talking to the general public, that's a good, safe advice. Also, too, is it's just being sound about money. I mean, people are getting married older now, and you don't want to take just a complete financial mess into a new long-term relationship. So be thinking about that too. Is what do I need to do to just clean this stuff up so I'm not a red flag to somebody, financially.
Yeah.
And I would, for $80, you can go on Dave Ramsey's website and you can take Financial Peace. And it's pretty hardcore about getting out of debt, but it could be if you don't have any debt or you have very little debt, it's very easy to fix that. But I would consider taking that course. I talk about that a lot on here because that's the only place I know you can go for a solid foundation in just how money works, right? Some people were worried about their credit scores and all that. I mean, you do need an initial credit score to get a mortgage, I guess. But after that, save cash, pay cash for stuff, right? But yeah, for $80, you can take that course. I've sent that to a couple of clients' children in the last few months. My own kids are taking the teenage version of it, which one hasn't even started yet. And the other one's about halfway through it. She has a big carrot at the end for her. So yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to find sound financial advice. If you walk into a brokerage firm like a Edward Jones or a Wells Fargo or a Merrill, somebody like that, that is not the place to be in your 20s. They're not going to help you. They're going to try to sell you stuff, right? So stay away from places like that. Focus on more independent advice.
Definitely.
So a couple of things. So we have an episode, our last episode, Financial Planning in Your 20s. You can reference that if you want more information. Episode 124, this is something we did last year. I guess it was during Financial Awareness Month. But financial literacy is vital for everyone. Actually, we had a lot of downloads on that one. Episode 124, we simply just start naming investment terms and defining them, right? So that might be things, if you know nothing about finance, you graduated, you're a history major, you didn't take one single class, go through the terms on that podcast. And then also episode 123 was estate planning for young adults. That might be something that you could be interested in as well. You need to have a basic will, once you're an adult, basic power of attorney, medical directive, right? That should be set up for you. And then YouTube videos, which are all linked in our show notes. Avoid the annuity salesperson. That talks a little bit about the financial services world and how we're set up and how so many of us are so different. And there's only one set of us that's really investing in the best interest of the clients, and that's the fiduciary fee only people. And we're a little harder to find sometimes. How to be a long-term investor, that's also on the YouTube channel that are linked here in the show notes. And that's a short little video just to be focused on the long term, not the short term. I will say the things that I see people in their 20s doing right now is a lot of crypto trading, a lot of buying individual stocks, following these meme stocks. They're trying to make a quick buck. And I think my advice to everyone in their 20s is you can make a quick buck and then also quickly disappear. So I would focus on just building solid foundation on a long-term portfolio. Crypto stuff is interesting. It's obviously could be something that happens in the future. We actually have a podcast now called A Wiser Crypto Investors. Yeah. Anyway, we just started that. You can find that anywhere you listen to the podcast. Robert and I are kind of diving into different crypto topics, but the first couple of series talk about the basics. Ultimately, though, I don't know, that's not your long-term investment strategy. Long-term investment strategy has got to be something much more traditional. Maybe it seems kind of boring, but it works good, lasts a long time, and is the backbone of our capitalist society, really, right? So anyway, those are some resources you can have. And if you're 20 years old listening to this and you need some help, call Michaela.
Oh, putting me on the spot.
No, anyone here is always happy to have a phone conversation about maybe something you're struggling with, or you want to know in what order to do things. We're always happy to help anybody that walks through the front door. All right, guys.
All right. Good conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, that way you don't miss any new episodes. We would also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. We would love to hear from you. This episode was produced and edited by Lilton Moore.